Hello, Internet. It's your boy Tonkus, and today we're going to be reading some more random stuff. And before we do that, let me just throw this disclaimer up on the screen. All views and opinions presented in the material being read belong to their respective authors. I am just a guy reading them. Do not shoot the messenger. And yeah, let's just get straight on to whatever we're reading. So we are reading Supernova Daybreak by Bad Dragon today. And just a quick note, I actually originally recorded this yesterday, but I got interrupted 3 times on separate occasions, so I decided to just scrap the recording and just start all over. So I guess that just means that I know some of what's gonna happen already. So anyway, the time for action. Twilight. Spike climbed on the sweat-soaked sheets and shook the sleeping pony. Twilight, wake up. Ugh. The princess warily opened her eyes. Huh? Who turned up the heat? She folded a wing and fanned her sweaty muzzle. I dreamed of Luna, screaming at me to prepare for danger. The world was burning, and so was she. It felt way too real. That's just it, Twi. She didn't let him finish. Spike, I told you I'd be studying the moon most of the night. Why do you wake me up this early? And why is it as hot as Tartarus out in here? Look outside! Spike screeched. Twilight turned to the window and immediately shut her eyes to protect them from the bright light glittering from the Canterlot Mountain. Wow, Celestia outdid herself today. That's quite a morning we're having. Twilight, it's burning! A tear drifted down Spike's cheek. Everything's burning. No, it can't be. Her eyes spread wide as she gasped. Yet the moon was bright red yesterday. It was a sign. How could I have ignored the potential danger? Twilight's horn lit up. A moment later, she vanished and appeared on all 4 hooves at her working table. I observed the light show with my instruments merely because I found the phenomena interesting. There were flashes on the moon's surface. How could I have dismissed their significance? She looked at the sketch of the moon she had drawn and skimmed through the notes she'd written before retiring to bed at the end of the night. The reddish glow, the increased illumination, it all makes sense now. The moon wasn't a mist last night, as I have assumed. It was reflecting the severe condition of the sun. What's going on, Twilight? Spike put a claw on her foreleg. Are we doomed? Remember the letter Celestia sent us yesterday about the solar flare acting up? You told me to archive it under trivia information. A mistake on my part. I should have taken it more seriously. All I did was gather some basic data from my telescope, but postponed its analysis to a later time. She pointed to the pile of papers in the corner. I think that was an early warning of something dire. She ran through the numbers. The infrared spectrum, intensity, amplitude, all stats are on the rise. Oh, why didn't I take the time to study it further? You said the moon analysis takes precedence. Yeah, mistakes were made. It's evident that there's more at play here than a simple protuberance. I should have acted, not just observed. Her eyes shot wide as she gasped. My friends! I need to save them! There's nothing out there to save. Wait, there's nothing left out there to save, his voice cracked. Everything is burning. We won't even be able to save ourselves. Celestia is the sun's chaperone. She'll know what to do. I need to speak with her right away. When Twilight looked outside, she squinted at Canterlot, flaring in the distance. The cliff city was aflame. Twilight, there are fires everywhere. You'll be scorched the moment you step out into the open. Well, we can't stay here either. Our castle is melting away as we speak. There's not much time left. Twilight looked up while her forehead wrinkled. Where would I go if I were Celestia? She put a hoof under her chin. Oh, I know. There's a shelter in the caves under Canterlot. Do you mean the mines where Chrysalis held Cadence captive on her wedding day? Spike asked. Indeed, they're our best bet. It's the place every Canterlotian would head to, and where we're bound to find the princesses. And where we can't possibly go in this scorching day? True. We can't go to Canterlot via the conventional means. The train, balloon, even flying are out of the question. Teleportation is the only option we have. I just wish the city wasn't so far away. Well, It is what it is. She gazed through the window. Come closer, Spike. I can take us further if we're in the same magic field when I cast the space dilation spell. We'd only stand a chance of teleporting through the inferno if you could bring us to Canterlot in one go. And even then, you can't do that. You've tried it before, remember? I almost made it once using I've almost made it once using single blink when I ported myself. With the two of us, I'll just have to try extra hard, I guess. Now come here. She crouched down, lighting up her horn as she glared through the window to the distant city in flames. This won't work, and you know it, Twilight. Spike, I'm not leaving you behind, and that's final, so quit cavilling. Or cavilling. I don't exactly know what the pronunciation of that word is. Let's see what text-to-speech says.
Spike, I'm not leaving you behind, and that's final, so quit cavilling. Okay. Given how smart you are, you're acting very foolishly.
Stop it.
We both know what your limits are.
Stop it.
Given how smart you are, you're acting very foolishly. We both know what your limits are. By teleporting both of us.
Down here. I didn't see those controls there. Okay. Given how smart you are, you're acting very foolishly. We both know what your limits are. By teleporting both of us, you'd burn up like a phoenix halfway to Canterlot. Clench tight to my body so I don't lose you midway. We're doing this. Her magic channels flared up, rushing through the fabric of space and nether towards the endpoint destination. The nature of the teleportation energy is such that it doesn't interact with radiation. In other words, the deadly rays outside won't be able to reach us while the spell is ongoing. This fact will work to our advantage. As long as we're transitioning through the nether, the sun won't affect us. Teleporting is not what worries me. Coming out on the other side is when your coat catches fire. Yes, upon the collapse of the entangled field, there will be nothing to shield us from the sun. Her tail tucked behind both hind legs. It is unfortunate, but with the two of us, I might indeed have to make a stop midway. But it's okay. She looked at Spike and forced her muzzle into a bitter smile. When the spell concludes, I'll relaunch my channels to teleport us again towards Canterlot. By the third blink, at most, we should be within the reach of the shelter. The direct exposure to the beams isn't something I'm looking forward to, but be what may, I'll bring you to safety. You have my word, Spike. Don't be scared of the trip. I've got this. Twilight... Spike started, but got interrupted. Don't fret about the stops in between. During the casting time prior to each blink, you should, at least for a little while, be resistant to the high energy rays thanks to your thick scales. Which you don't have, he sighed. This isn't up for debate, Spike. I'll take you to the shelter, even if it kills me. Spike gasped and shook his head. Get over here, you stubborn dragon. We can't waste any more time. The charge spell is draining my mana reserves. You're risking both of our lives by impeding. I'd never risk your life, Spike said with a determined voice. That's nice to hear, but right now I'd like to see you put your goodwill into action rather than words alone. We can talk after we pull out of this oven of a castle. I love you, Twilight. I love you too, Spike. Now brace yourself. Here we go. Forgive me, Twi, Spike whispered from behind her. I believe in you, but I don't trust the overly optimistic plan you're betting our lives on. I'm sending you to Celestia directly. What? Twilight turned back just to see herself being engulfed in magic fire coming from Spike's mouth. She felt the flesh from her very bones disintegrate. The corrosion ripped apart her entire body into minuscule shreds. A moment later, the pressure from all around squeezed her tight as if she was being forcibly dressed in a fur-tight bodysuit. Just as it was her own flesh reattaching to her bones, with skin enwrapping it all together. When the reverse cauterizing of Spike's fire ceased, Twilight found herself midair, exposed to the scorching sunbeams. The bright light enveloped her whole field of view, despite both eyes being shut. With clenched teeth, she worked With clenched teeth, she worked through the increasing torturous anguish. It felt as if pendant needles pierced through her skin ever deeper. She had intended to withstand the searing power of the sun, but nothing could prepare her for the avalanche of pain signals coming from half of her body. The blistering heat relentlessly ripped through her skin and clawed deeper still. Just when the panic flooded her mind, she fell within the shadow of Canterlot cavern walls and onto a sandy path. The smell of kindling fur filled her nostrils. In hindsight, it felt as if she had fallen through a double layer of lava to safety. She gasped for air, but the steam mixed with the smoke emanating from her burned-off feathers, coat, tail, and mane didn't offer much refreshment. Princess of Friendship? An unfamiliar voice came from before her. She opened her eyes and looked forth. Two shapes trotted towards the mountainside with a litter bestrode between them. On the stretcher lay Princess Celestia. Hang in there, Princess Twilight Sparkle, the front one said. We'll come for you in a moment. It's okay, I can stand on my own. I just need to piece myself together, that's all. She clambered on all fours and inspected her sweltering body. Nothing was broken from the fall, but she was far from unscathed. The pony in front banged a hoof on the massive metal door. Open the shelter and let us in. We have 2 princesses with us. Twilight squinted in the direction of the door to safety. Above it was the big rainbow-colored sign Celestia had put up on the opening day of the shelter. Safe space. With the crystal walls in front of the cavern melting away, the blazing curtain crept ever lower, igniting the wooden letters. Soon the whole entrance would be exposed to the merciless sun, closing off the entryway to the interior. The massive door slowly creaked open, and the 2 ponies carrying Celestia rushed inside. Twilight trotted close behind them. As soon as she entered the shelter, a scroll materialized before her muzzle. She caught it with her magic midair and spread it out. Don't worry about me, Twilight. We'll be together soon enough. Your best assistant until the end of the world, Spike. Oh boy. I said this the first time that I read it before I deleted the recording, and I'm gonna say it again now. This story definitely warrants the dark tag that's on the front page of it. And yeah, this here just gives me chills. The guard by the door turned towards the newcomer. The newcomers. Is there any pony else outside? The one at the back end of the stretcher shook his head. We're the last. Had Princess Luna not channeled her magic shadow around us, we wouldn't make it either. Will the Princess of the Night be joining us? The pony at the door asked with the... Will the Pony of the Night be joining us? The pony at the door asked with a lowered voice. She said she might visit us in our dreams. Her shadow started to twist and turn as we approached the shelter. It abruptly vanished the moment we reached the safety of the ridge. Twilight bowed her head. The guard leaned on the massive door. I'm closing us off. Twilight interjected. I'm actually expecting a friend. The guard paused. Is your friend outside? He peeked through the half-ajar door. It might take him a while, you see. He's still in Ponyville, but he's on his way here. Twilight stuttered. The door slammed shut. I'll stay guard here, Princess. If, by a miracle, some pony is still alive out there, I'll hear them knocking. You should go to the main chamber. The refugees there could use some of your optimism. The very fact that you made it might give them some hope. Twilight nodded and walked forth. A moment later, she stopped in her tracks and looked back. The friend I mentioned, his scales are quite thick since he already went through the melting phase. The guard stood sentry facing the door. He bowed his head and said nothing. Also, don't mind if I have, occasional sniffles through the reading of this. I have horrible allergies right now, and my nose has been stuffed all day. A cold shiver ran through the black and lavender alicorn. The trembling sprayed the ashes from her burned-off coat on the ground near the exit. Her darkened ears flopped as she made her way around the corner. Keep it together, Twilight, she whispered to herself under her breath. After shaking her head, she plunged forth to catch up to the ponies carrying Celestia. When she closed the distance, the smoldered face of the Princess of the Sun came into her view. We've already lost so many. I'm desperate for some good news right about it now. Please tell me she's going to make it. The last one turned his head. Princess Luna told us her sister merely suffered a sunstroke and should soon be awake. He paused for a second. What's happened out there, Princess Twilight? First, the blood-red moon, then this blazing sun. What in Equestria is going on? The sun, Twilight swallowed before gathering the resolve to continue, is turning into a supernova. What can we do? She bowed her head. Nothing. And that's the first chapter. Okay. Take a little breather for a moment. Oh. Make sure that my avatar is syncing correctly. Reset position. Come on, eyes open. Open. Okay. Next chapter. One for all. Celestia opened her eyes and found herself lying on a makeshift bed. She warily rose to a sitting position. The smoldered white head twitched in the rhythm of heartbeats. Even when both hooves rose to support it, the inner thumping wouldn't cease. When her eyes stilled a little, she noticed a presence in the room. There was a pony at the desk in the corner, shuffling papers and writing down some notes. The color scheme was foreign to the Sun Princess, but she recognized the alicorn shape right away. The wrinkled tissues on the floor beside the pony made Celestia question if it was her orderly student. After squinting her eyes, she recognized the starry cutie mark, confirming her first impression. What happened to your beautiful coat, Twilight? Celestia, you're awake! I was scared I'd lose you, too. Twilight was with her in a flash. Yeah, my tail and mane and half of the coat are gone, along with most of the feathers on the wings, but the skin is only mildly singed. Your blisters tell another story, Celestia commented. Don't worry about me. It's not as bad as it looks, honest. I was only sunbathing for a moment. Twilight waved a hoof in disregard. What about you? How do you feel? Celestia pressed both forehooves on the sides of her head. My son, I felt the energies being drastically different from usual when I rose it. The wild cosmic energies made me shiver when they intertwined with my magic. It was like nothing I had ever experienced. My instincts told me something was very wrong, but I paid them no heed. I diligently performed my duty for 1,000 years, and I could not rationalize putting an end to my daily habit based on a mere feeling. The ponies depend on me to provide them with the sunlight, and that thought made me go forward with my morning routine. I still cannot fathom the destruction I have caused today. Every pony relied on me, and I let you all down. It's my fault, Twilight sobbed. You sent me a letter warning me of the protuberances. That letter was just a trivia, Celestia said. Well, at least I thought so when I sent it. I took the measurements, but I failed to connect the dots in time. No use worrying about the past now. What matters from this point forth are the actions we take. You should not blame yourself for the events beyond your influence, Twilight. You already did more than I expected you to. If there is a blame to be put on some pony, it ought to be strapped on my back. Despite being responsible for the sun, I have always taken my solar companion for granted, because it was a constant in my lengthy life. I thought the yellow orb would moderately shine forever. My assumptions were unfounded. I have felt the stirring energies even before I rose it this morning. Despite the early signs, I remained a slave to my daily routine. Since fillyhood, I have pictured myself growing wise through the centuries. In hindsight, it seems that I have fallen stagnant instead. Perhaps there are still survivors, burrowing in some hiding place outside. Twilight looked up at her former caretaker. The sun, is there a way to lower it? 'Tis not that easy, you see. For more than a millennium, I consistently stayed connected with the solar energies. It is what allowed me to move the sun beyond the horizon, even when lacking direct line of sight. The bond, which also preserved my longevity, held firm throughout my life. In the wake of daybreak, this link was broken. I broke it. The energies were too much for me to bear, and I feared for my very life. In the heat of the moment, I cut the ties with my precious. The only way to establish them again would be for me to face the sun directly. Well, that's out of the question then, Twilight sighed. The rays would burn you in an instant. Perhaps not in an instant, but yes, you are correct. Lowering the sun in its current condition would be my last sunset. Celestia caressed her former student on the half of the head that was still covered in coat. Where are we? How are my ponies faring? We're in a cavern under Canterlot. It's fortunate that you had this place repurposed into a shelter after changelings attacked. 3 dozen ponies made it here in time. I was just calculating how many stockpiles we have. The food won't be a problem. There are hundreds of hay bales in stock. Even though the streams of fresh water have already dried up, there are enough liquids in reserves to last us a lifetime. What worries me is the rising heat in the cavern. Luna? Celestia whispered. My condolences, Twilight bowed her head. Your sister didn't make it, and she sniveled. Neither did any of my friends from Ponyville. She paused. Not even Spike. A tear drifted down her muzzle and splattered on the floor. I'm sorry for your loss, my poor thing. Yours and mine. Alas, this is the time when we have to reach deep for our inner strength. As hard as it may seem to fight the despair in our hearts, we are expected to rise above the challenges that face us. Heavy is the crown of a princess, but wear it we must. The times like this that mark our these mark our noble nature. We must ensure that it shines like a beacon of hope. And if there is no hope, Twilight sighed. Listen, Twilight. As princesses, we must be the first ones to address the threats and the very last to falter. The dark thoughts of the past have to bow before our royal will and resolve. Our focus must be directed towards the ones who are still around. 'Tis our duties as protectors of Equestria to shield the fragile subjects from harm. We cannot stand idly in the time when ponies need us the most. I'd do anything to make things right. Twilight's eyes shied away. But I just don't see a way out of this cosmic disaster. The scale of it all is over my head. It pains me to see my son be the source of such turmoil. I wish I had paid more heed to my obligation. It was placed in my care so long ago, but ever since my first sunrise, I have always taken the source of light as for granted. As embarrassing as it is for me to admit this, you have studied the sun more in a decade than I have in a millennium. Twilight, have your scientific endeavors taught you anything about the nature of our predicament? Can we wait it out? Wait it out? Twilight raised her eyebrows, though only one of them was intact. The fusion is reaching critical levels. Science talk. You still haven't grown out of it, I see. Do you remember when you were still my protege, and I showed you a sunspot at the end of the day? Most of the telescopes in Canterlot mysteriously disappeared overnight. You obsessed over it for moons, trying to understand the sun's irregularity. I found it endearing then, but never would I have imagined that you could actually learn of the orb's inner workings since then. Tell me, Twilight, do you presume this climate change is permanent? Heat waves dissipate in time. Perhaps the same will happen with this one. Heat wave? Celestia, don't you understand? The sun is going supernova. It's impossible to reverse the chain of reaction once it starts. The power output is on the rise, and what we're seeing is only the beginning of the end. The radiation will scorch the whole of Equestria until all life is extinguished, and the sun shall grow hotter still. Even if a few of the lucky ones manage to reach safety in time, they'll be cooked alive not long from now. This shelter is no exception as far as the long-term prosperity goes. Our fate is already sealed. There's just no place to channel excess heat to. With the fireball in the sky transitioning into its last form, the ground will reflect its condition. Thank you for laying it on me straight, as you have. I see this quandary is dire indeed. I do not mean to press you, Twilight, but I need to know this as a foregone conclusion. Are you absolutely certain that nothing can be done to circumvent our desperate situation? I'd wish I'd figure out the sun's hyperactivity sooner. Then you could leave the rising supernova set behind the horizon, and we'd be safe from its deadly rays, but I missed the window of opportunity. That course of action was the only thing that could save us, yet I didn't utilize the option. Instead, I chose to sacrifice the life of every pony in exchange for a nap. The answer is no. Nothing we can do from here on can absolve us of my mortal sin of complacency. Don't blame yourself, Twilight. When a new development arises, we make the best of it. Trot with me, my distressed one. She stood up and walked out of the modest cavern chamber. I don't foresee adaptation to lava as a viable opinion. Twilight's ears drooped as she followed behind. At the intersection of 3 long corridors, Celestia brushed a forehoof on the wall. Ah, I remember exploring this crystal cavern with my sister once. It is ironic that Luna had the right idea a millennium ago. I used to despise her for the ploy and even banished her to the moon when she tried to enact it. And yet, her darkly vision is the one thing that can save Equestria now. That's not even remotely funny. Twilight thumped a hoof on the ground. Luna is gone, and with no pony capable of shading the sun, the scorching day will last forever. We're all doomed. We are not doomed just yet, the white alicorn whispered under her breath. It is not over until it is over. She turned around. Twilight, wait here. Celestia, the main chamber is in the opposite direction. Sadly, my condition will not allow me to address any pony. Thou shalt be the bearer of the news, my dear. I tried to calm down the survivors before, but they're stricken with grief. They've lost their loved ones. We all have. There just isn't any hoping left to cling on to anymore. Now, nowhere is our faith more evident than near the entrance. This is how hot the rest of the shelter will feel after a while. What is it that you wish to accomplish here anyway? Royal duties, Celestia said simply. Ah, yes, you're right. We ought to evacuate every pony to the farthest side of the cavern. Perhaps we should also cause a cave-in to produce more thermal isolation between us and the outside. The door will never be opened anyway. Never say never, Celestia said under her breath while she peeked around the corner. Twilight perked her ears and raised an eyebrow. On any other day I'd agree with you, but the world is a death trap now. The mentor ignored the former student's pessimism. She tapped a hoof on the ground. Guard, come here and report. Princess Celestia, I'm glad to see you on your hooves. The guard swayed from around the corner, respectively nodded to Twilight and bowed to the taller alicorn. There are no other survivors after your arrival, Princess Celestia. I doubt there could be any. The red door is a clear sign of the looming danger outside. Despite being in the safety of the shelter, I'm already drained because of the heat that's protruding inside. May I please request a permission for a short breather at the water reserves? I'm dehydrated. Celestia's horn flickered as she walked to the entry corridor and looked towards the door. There's nothing else for you to do here, my faithful guard. You are relieved. She glanced at Twilight. And you should get some water too, my dear. No, I'm okay, Twilight sighed. I'll be back with flasks for both of you, the guard said as he walked towards the main chamber. My successor, Celestia's voice cracked. Twilight looked up at her former mentor. With Luna gone, the sun cannot be eclipsed. Fortunately, there is another way to shield us from its reach. As I have lowered it each day for a millennium, I can lower it one more time. Celestia's horn glowed brightly as she firmly stepped forward. Take care of my little ponies for me as best as you can. The night shall last forever. She disappeared behind the door. What? Twilight gasped in horror. Celestia, no! Don't open the door! The back wall bathed in glaring light. An alicorn-shaped shadow defied the brightness from the center. When the illumination faded, the smell of burned flesh filled Twilight's nostrils. The heat rushed inside the shelter through the open door, but it dissipated as it protruded down the corridor. The scorching rays of the blazing sun no longer sustained it. And from then on, there was only darkness. the eternal night. And that's the story. Oh boy. Yeah, this is absolutely warranting all three of these tags, actually. Dark, drama, and tragedy. And yeah, I guess this reading will be joining these YouTube auto readings and whatever MP3 download that is. So yeah, thanks for watching the video, of course. Subscribe if you like this sort of content. I also post tech videos and just other random crap every so often. And yeah, until next time, goodbye.